Hey Andy, good to see you. Now, I could have sworn that the last time we spoke, you said you were going to be in Weymouth with the Musto Skiffs. That doesn't look very Weymouth unless you've taken up camp down in Dorset.
No, I am now back in Winchester. Thanks very much, Matt. I'm just a couple of days back from the Musto Skiff World Championships and had a thoroughly good time. It was nice to do a bit of my own sailing for a change.
Yeah, how was it? I did actually look to see where you were, and you were up there in the sort of top third of the fleet at least, if not more.
Yeah, I pleasantly surprised myself. My battle really was to see if I could beat Brian Greensmith and Richard Smith and the other old boys in the so-called Grand Master category. Those of us in our mid to late fifties, and I eventually managed to just squeak the win in the Grand Masters category, and
Oh, brilliant.
I was 17th out of 75 in the whole fleet, and so I was extremely happy with that. Managed to pull off a few port tack starts, not a pure one, not a pure one straight across the nose of everyone, but sort of wiggling through. And my starts were good. My upwind speed, pleasantly surprised to find I was fast, and then went round the windward mark, and then it all turned to custard after that. But the nature of championship racing, as you know, is if you can get your nose ahead at the beginning, it gives you quite an advantage. So even though I was about as agile getting across the boat as President Biden getting up the steps of Air Force One, I just about got away with it.
And did you have much breeze?
Mostly it was stretch legs. We had one light day in Weymouth Bay, where it was sitting in, and that doesn't play to my strengths or my body weight. But no, mostly it was stretched, good breeze, and yeah, mix of conditions. Sam Pascoe won it by a country mile. He was expected to do that. The guy from Weymouth on home waters. Actually, funnily enough, Sam Pascoe and Sam Barker, two of the best that know those waters inside out. The so-called rules of Weymouth weren't weren't playing as they should have done. So even those guys were being caught out by what was normally the expected bang the left or bang the right side wasn't always working. Just as we always know, it's not normally like that. Is the rule that applies to every regatta.
Yeah, it is. Well, I don't know Sam Pascoe at all, but I do know that whenever I've looked at the Sailjuice Winter Series events over here that run, which for those that don't know are handicap-based events, it doesn't matter what it's blowing. He's always at the front, isn't he? And he's really good in heavy weather as well.
He is, and yeah, he won the recent edition of the Selden Sailjuice Winter Series, and so that was a whole bunch of sailing that he got under his belt during the winter period, going around all kinds of wacky racetracks, not like the standard windward leeward that we have at a championship. But as soon as the breeze changes and you find yourself on a tight reach or having to get the kite down early, most of us on the windward leeward training haven't practiced that stuff, whereas Sam Pascoe, Rob Richardson, who was second, he did the Selden Sailjuice Winter Series. That diversity of sailing experience and keeping on sailing through the winter, I think, set them up pretty nicely to be able to do well at the windward leeward stuff in the championships as well. So anyway, fantastic regatta. It's a really hard boat to sail.
Yeah.
I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is. And, 75 people competing in that kind of boat. And Alicia Biggs, 19 years old and the only woman on the racetrack, hoping to see more women get into the class. And Alicia was often finishing mid-fleet, and she's not long been in the boat. So, we'd like to see more women get into the fleet as well.
Yeah, amazing. Well, if nothing else, and congratulations once again, because I do think that is a really impressive performance. It also set you up rather nicely for the next big gig, which is only a few days away, isn't it? The Olympics. Yeah, I mean, you must be off there pretty soon, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. So I'll be getting there just a couple of days before competition begins this Sunday, and yeah, we'll see how it plays out. They've had some fantastic training breeze in Marseille. If you've seen the photos, absolutely spectacular. But as the summer gets warmer, potentially the thermal breezes get a little bit weaker. and the early part of the regatta looks like it could be fairly light winds, and it's the windsurfers, the foiling IQ foil windsurfers that kick off competition on Sunday 28th of July, along with the 49er and 49er FX skiffs. Now the skiffs can race in light winds quite happily, but the IQ foils really need 9 knots or more to get racing. So after all this fantastically windy build-up, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that actually the breeze is going to be sufficient to really showcase what those IQ foils can do. So how about you, Matt? You're in Hamble today, but you've been a busy boy.
I am, yes. Yes, I'm in Hamble today. And it's got to that part of the season where you walk out the front of the Planet Sail door and you cannot fail to bump into someone, not something, someone, but which is a good thing. Unless you're on a deadline, and then it's a very bad thing, and that keeps happening at the moment. But there we go. I can't complain about that. But there's been lots going on. What's been going on recently? I did a day over in Cowes at the British Classic Regatta over in Cowes, which was absolutely superb, despite the fact that it was chucking it down with rain to start with. But it was brilliant. And I sailed on Kialoa, the old Maxi Kialoa II, and she's a great big 75-foot beautiful boat. I mean, she was built in 1962 for Jim Kilroy. And funny enough, in fact, she keeps catching my eye because she keeps turning up here in HYS and sitting on the end of the pontoon out there. And I've sort of got to know them and managed to talk my way on board, which was rather nice. Had a great day out on that. But fantastic boat, fascinating boat. I didn't realise that, I did realise that she's done pretty much all of the world's major offshore races, from the Fastnet, multiple Fastnets, multiple Sydney Hobarts, Transpacks, you name it, that boat's done it. And it continues to do so with the current owners, the 2 brothers who own it, 2 Australian. And they came up to do the Fastnet. I think it was the 2017 Fastnet they decided they wanted to do. So they sailed the boat up, did some other races, did some more on the way home, took it back to Australia, did several Sydney Hobarts. I think they did a Transpac in between or something. Then they decided a couple of years ago they wanted to come up and do last year's Fastnet, so they sailed it back up again, did the Fastnet. It looked as comfortable as anything in 35 knots of breeze, just about the only boat in the fleet to do so. And I was chatting to them on the boat, and that boat has, as I say, done all the major championships, major offshore races in the world. But it has never, in its life, has never been shipped anywhere. It has always sailed on its own bottom to all these events. And maybe I've got a bit too super geeky and I need to get out some more, but I thought that was pretty impressive. And I was trying to think of the kind of boats because she was a modern ocean racer of her day. How many modern ocean racers of the day would be able to do that now? I think the answer's close to 0. Well, maybe with the exception of some ocean race boats, the old Volvo boats or Moccas, but they all get shipped at some point, don't they?
Yeah, well, it makes me think of the America's Cup and how the Americans used to insist on the challengers sailing their J-class yachts all the way across the Atlantic to be able to compete at Newport, Rhode Island, which seemed like the most ridiculously unfair set of rules that you had to be able to deliver the boat on its own terms, which was a lot simpler for the Americans than it was for, say, the British.
Well, it's funny you should say that, and I'm not making this up. People might think that we sort of agreed this through, because what you won't know is I've literally just stepped out of the office to come and do this, where I was just editing that very story. I was interviewing someone at the New York Yacht Club, one of their historians there, and he was, and I literally just got to that point where we've been talking about the inequality of the America's Cup in the early days, way before the J class, where they had to sail over there to get there, because it was really the only way to get your boat there. And I was saying, surely that was the biggest reason why the Americans hung on to the America's Cup for so long, 132 years as it happens. And he said, well, no, not so much really, because I thought the Americans were designing and building boats that were for basic inshore racers over there to defend the cup. And we were having to, anybody who challenged had to design something and build something that would sail across the Atlantic. Apparently, when they got to the other side, well, they put extra strengthening into the boats before they sailed them across. They were ballasted up. They were configured in a completely different way. They get over to the States, rip everything out, put a different rig in, and just take it down to what was quite a competitive boat. So, I mean, you could argue that being a supporter of the American side of things, he might be bound to say that. But I thought it was a very interesting view. And he said it did play a part in it, but maybe not quite so much as people think.
Okay. Oh well, that is fascinating, and it would add quite a dimension to AC75 racing, if that were something they were required to do these days, or indeed the F50s that contested the 2017 Bermuda Cup, which of course we've recently seen complete season 4 of SailGP in San Francisco, and what a finale we saw, because for once it wasn't Team Australia. Tom Slingsby winning 3 seasons in a row, but not this time.
No, exactly. Spoiler alert, he didn't. You're right, he didn't do it, and it was absolutely fascinating. And I wonder if we should say who won, because it wasn't definitely wasn't. I'm not going to say that, because we're actually making a little cut down version of that, and just of an explanation of what happened, which goes out in the next, here comes the plug, in the next on course, which comes out in a week or so. But it was very interesting.
Well, what I do want to say, without revealing the nationality of the team that did win SailGP this season, is that the 2 of the contenders, including the helmsman of that particular team, are just about to contest the Olympic Games in the 49er, and they're being coached by my partner on my Road to Gold course, Hamish Wilcox, a New Zealander who has been working remotely for them as a coach, but is actually going to be on the water working with that partnership. We're not saying what country they're representing, but they do have a serious shot at certainly at the podium and possibly at Olympic gold. And bearing in mind, Hamish Wilcox was with Pete Burling and Blair Tuke for the last 2 games, getting a gold in Rio and a silver, just that last gasp silver where they lost out the gold to Great Britain, to Dylan Fletcher and Stu Bithell, right on the finish line of Tokyo. Those guys have been busy winning SailGP and are now going to see, just 2 or 3 weeks later, if they can win a gold medal at the Olympics. But funnily enough, one of the other teams, probably considered the favourites, having won the Worlds 3 times in the last 4 years, are the Dutch, Bart Lambriax and Floris van der Werken. And I was really surprised to see that lining up on the start line against me at the Musto Skiff Worlds was their coach, Rick Peacock. I was saying, Rick, what are you doing here? And apparently the access to there was some sort of additional security lockdown or check where the athletes and the coaches weren't allowed access to the boat park until a certain date last weekend. And that suddenly freed up Rick Peacock to be able to compete in the Musto Skiff Worlds. And he won them a couple of years ago, actually, in Kiel. And he barely sailed the boat this time round. So I think he was 4th this time round. But anyway, yeah, he and I sort of both hoping to do the Musto Skiff Worlds and do the Olympics. And it was funny to see him there. Anyway, I'm going round in circles, Matt.
No, well, it's interesting because it does raise an interesting point that I can't think of an America's Cup season anyway that has butted up so closely to the Olympics, or in fact any other major event that might sort of share the competitors. But this time there are quite a lot, and I can't remember who they are, but I know that when we've gone down the list, there's a lot of AC team members, whether it's in the America's Cup Team themselves or the youth and the women's America's Cup campaigns, that are going to be in Marseille beforehand doing the America's Cup there. And of course, a whole bundle of them that were doing SailGP before. So it's an incredibly busy season in the middle of the season for high performance boats in the top end of the sport.
Yeah, I'm sure if we thought hard enough, we could identify somebody that has done all 3, that has just completed SailGP for the season, is now about to do the games, and will also be part of the America's Cup. I can't put my finger on any individual right now, but
sounds like a competition to me.
Yes, we can get viewers to write in and let us know the things that they know.
On a postcard.
Yes, on a postcard. But Ruggero Tita, racing with Caterina Banti, the Nacra 17 team from Italy, looking to defend the Olympic title from 3 years ago in Tokyo. They're the hot favourites to get the gold medal again in Marseille. And then the question will be, will Tita, will certainly be part of Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, but will he be one of the nominated helmsmen? Will it be him? Will it be Marco Gridoni, the other young guy on that team? Or will it be the two guys that were running the boat back in, steering the boat back in Auckland three years ago, Francesco Bruni and Jimmy Spithill? So there's a real selection headache there. The four fantastic helmsmen of quite different ages. And who's going to get the nod? Or are they going to use the round robins to rotate those guys and give them all a taste of it? It's sort of a nice problem to have, but I wonder if it's going to also create some political stress within the Italian team as well.
Yeah, well, I think that could be true in some of the other teams as well. But I mean, the Italian team is the most glaringly obvious one, isn't it? Where they've got an embarrassment of talent in their team. But I think you're right. I think it may well cause some issues, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear of changes later on that maybe we didn't expect with some of the sort of personnel on board the boat. I mean, one of the things that's interesting at the moment is we're not getting much intel from Barcelona at the moment, because the reconnaissance program that had reconnaissance teams filming on a daily basis and reporting on what the teams were doing, that was all part of the protocol. Teams had to sign up to that. They didn't have any choice in the matter. But that reconnaissance program finished at the end of June. So we haven't had a regular diet of footage and interviews and people being asked questions after every day they went out sailing. And there are some people I can see on the chats online that absolutely hate that. They think it's a disgrace. They think they've been abandoned. I think it's quite a good thing, actually. I think it's quite a good thing to have the reconnaissance program has been superb. It's been really good for people like me and others who want to try and get a feel for what's going on and try and relate that story. But I think it's quite nice to have a quiet patch of a month as far as media is concerned before the next time we see them racing. Well, there's going to be some practice racing just before the preliminary event. But the exciting thing, I think, about the preliminary event, and my worry is it's going to get lost in the understandable noise of the Olympics and summer holidays and everything else. But I think one of the coolest, most interesting parts of this America's Cup cycle will happen at the end of August, because it's the preliminary event. And the reason why I think it's important is, one, no one's lost. Everybody's in a good mood, and we just don't know who's going to come out on top. Two, it comprises, I'm pretty sure it comprises of fleet racing and then some match racing at the end, like the format we've seen before. And perhaps most significantly of all, it's the only time that we'll see the Kiwis line up against the challengers. That's their only opportunity. So it's as crucial for them as it is for everybody else to try and get, and whether anybody sandbags or not. I mean, there's going to be loads of accusations of sandbagging. I just don't believe that happens very often nowadays. There isn't enough time to sandbag. You've got to be super confident to waste that opportunity. So I think it's going to be very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that part of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that could actually be in some ways the most fascinating part of the whole America's Cup. Now, Matt, I'm worried that you've been saying too much, and I wonder, as you've been speaking, there's a huge crane been rolling out behind you from Hamble Yacht Services, and it's sitting squarely behind you now, and I think that if we don't shut up soon,
it's going to lift me out.
It is. It's going to lift you out of the picture. So I think they're dropping us a hint.
Well, it'll be a nice way to go.
It might happen one day. All right.
Well, they're going to charge me for it if they do. That's the worrying thing.
Yeah, we can't afford that. We'll put a donate link button below this video. Anyway, I got to get packed. It's less than 24 hours before I fly to Marseille, so I'm going to get ready to go to the games. And I look forward to catching up with you when I'm down in Marseille and you are wherever you are next week.
Yep, I'll still be here, but no, I want to hear what's going on in Marseille. Good stuff. Safe travels. Give us a call next week.
Will do. Cheers, Matt.